Internet, it's me and him, and we watched Five Nights at Freddy's. Right off the bat, I gotta say this. Half the movie was horror, half the movie was comedy, but this was not a horror comedy. It felt like two different movies smashed together. Like there were scenes where there was definitely tension, and like there were murder robots and all that stuff, but then other times it was just happy family comedy fun time playing with ghosts and robots.
It was like a mixed bag of tones.
Yeah, it was very weird.
It kind of reminded me of, what was the one we watched last year with Justin Long, where it's like the creatures in the basement, the girl finds it, and then it cuts to all of a sudden Justin Long in like California, and it's like a happy movie for a while, and then it turns really crazy again. I was
Barbarian.
like, I was like, it had shades of that, but it didn't quite pull it off as good.
Yeah, it was weird.
Weird's a good description.
Now I'll start off by saying you haven't played the games. I've played the first game for a short while and was terrible at it and just kind of gave up. So we were basically going in blind without knowing the source material. So there may have been Easter eggs or references or like story points that would make more sense or would mean more if you were a fan of the game. But as just a horror fan watching it, it was very... I don't want to say like lackluster, because I mean it was a fine enough movie. They did good with a bunch of stuff, but
just a lot of mediocre.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. There was a lot of untapped potential. I guess is the best way I can say it. Like, it felt like they could have done a lot more. Like, I mean, the best parallel to draw is Willy's Wonderland, the one with Nick Cage that we watched. That felt like it was pretty much the same story, and I think it was like unofficially based on the game. But that did the story better with a smaller budget, I feel like. Like, they didn't go into the backstory of the robots and why they were haunted. They're just like, these are haunted robots, deal with it.
Right.
And it didn't have the weird twist villain that was a human at the end. It didn't do any of that stuff. It was just, hey, there's killer robots. You have to survive a night in this building with said killer robots. And honestly, that worked better. I didn't need a lot of the backstory. I just want to see the killer robots. Like, that had more creative kills. The robots got to be robots more. Like, here, half the time we saw the robots injure someone was in his dream, where it was just kids doing this with their fingers, which somehow cuts his skin.
Right, a shadow or a mark on the door.
Yeah. And I mean, I know it was PG-13, which always a mistake when a horror movie is PG-13. Always. But, I don't know, they didn't give us a lot to work with. Like... If you go into this expecting horror, you're going to be disappointed because there's nothing to scare you. They have to cut away every time because of the rating. And because it's based on a game that is majorly played by, kids and preteens, they know that's their audience. They're not going to alienate them, so they were never going to do the R rating because then they lose their audience. So, like, I don't know, it's a catch-22 of where it has to be targeted to kids, but because it's targeted to kids, it can't really be a horror movie. And then, so what did you think of the story just itself? Just the actual story?
It was okay. It caught me off guard, trying to be deeper than it was. I don't think they quite pulled it off, but I understand it, and it kept me engaged. I wasn't bored at any point.
Yeah, I can definitely say that.
But it felt like it was just, like you said, it just felt like it was missing some extra something to make it pushed over the top awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, there was... There's a lot of times, too, like, as we were watching, I can't even remember a lot of it now, but there was a lot of things that just didn't really seem to make sense, or that could have gone a different way that maybe would have been more interesting.
Like when Josh Hutcherson found out that they're ghosts in the suits, and it was just like, okay, that's what it was. It wasn't a second guessing. He didn't question it. It was like,
he accepted that really fast.
It is. I don't know. That was weird.
I'll say, too, like, they said that, when Vanessa told him, like, oh, the kids' bodies are in the robots. When you see the robots, that doesn't make sense. For at least a couple of them. Because the one is just a cupcake. So, like, unless there's just a severed head in there, there's no body. And then the big fox one, Foxy, I think it's called, which, great job on the naming, guys. The arms and legs were all just metal skeletal frame. Like, there couldn't possibly be a body in there, even a child's body. And the head, you could see right through to just a pole and some gears on the inside. So there's nothing in there either. So unless the whole body is crumpled up in the torso, there's no body in that one either.
Yeah.
So 2 of those 5 robots do not have bodies in them.
I can look past that. What I would have wanted to see is like if you had to push it to an R rating, like show the inside.
Yeah.
Give me that creep out factor that would have pushed it to somewhere like,
Yeah.
oh boy.
Well, it's funny because we both commented, one of the first times you see the animatronic come to life and move, Freddy Fazbear turns his head and there's a blue light on the inside that looks really cool. We both commented on that. And then between the glow of his eyes and then the blue coming from inside the robot,
It looks like an empty mechanical head.
You can see the mech and everything behind the scenes in the head through that. And there was no head in there. There was no kid. If they had the R rating, you could have at least got a little hint of like a skull or like just even a dark thing that wasn't defined, just to show, oh, there's something in there.
That's true.
There's more to it than just this robot. Like, they could have hinted right there at the beginning, and that would have set the stage much better.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And then what did you think of the, I guess it's the twist? The villain reveal at the end.
I was like 10 seconds before they did the reveal, I was going to say that was who it was.
The only reason I would have thought that is because there were no other characters in the movie.
Right.
Like, we were never introduced to anyone else, it had to be him.
Right. I was thinking, because they did the weird thing where Matthew Lillard said his name when he was looking for the job in the beginning. Like, he said, blah, and he couldn't finish his name.
He stopped reading with the last
recognized the name. I'm like, well, that's going to be important later.
Yeah.
Because they do that whole thing, and they just, all of a sudden, so I was like, at that point, it kind of, in my head, I went back to that moment all of a sudden. I was like, oh, it's probably, and it was.
Mm-hmm. I think that was a little too convenient too. How always happens. I don't know how to talk in camera properly, and I use all my oxygen. It was a little too convenient how at the end, like, the guy that's the villain that's trying to kill him and his sister also happens to be the guy that kidnapped his little brother a decade or 2 ago.
That's what I would have wanted to see.
Like that. Why? Why is that the only person involved in any crime?
Right. A little too convenient.
Yeah.
A little too convenient. Because he already offered him the job before he realized the name, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, he was already bringing him in and interviewing him for jobs before he read the form.
No, but specifically that one, didn't he? Did he say specifically the security guard job before he read the name?
That I can't remember.
I can't remember that either. That would be an important little bit. He might have said a totally different job if it wasn't for that. Maybe.
Yeah. But it's just too convenient. Like, of all the job people you go to, it happens to be the one that killed your little brother a decade or 2 ago, and he happens to remember your name and you specifically. Like, come on, that's ridiculous.
You got me doing that shit. You son of a... So I see what you're saying. I can kind of forgive that because it's just the way the story is, and it's part, like, you know, that's just the way. It would have been too confusing and too muddled if they had a whole separate story of someone else with Garrett, along with the ghosts of the bears. That would have been too much. So to make it one cohesive story, I get it, I understand it.
I think they should have just let it go. Because that was part of it too, how at the end he's like,
they were trying to make a deeper movie than they had to.
Yeah.
But, you know, it didn't bug me. Like I said, it didn't bug me. The only part that did bug me about that part of the story is when Josh Hutcherson found out, he would have gone apeshit and totally destroyed that guy.
Yeah, and he didn't.
He didn't.
Well, I think too, like, because at the end there, in his dream, he says to his little sister, like, you know, I've been doing everything wrong, and like, I was focused on him, and I should be focused on you. That's why I feel like he never should have got the closure. They never should have paid off the killer of the brother. They should just leave that out there. And that should be part of him demonstrating that, hey, I'm not going to hyperfixate on that anymore. I'm not going to focus on something way in the past when I have you, my own living sister, right here, right now. Like, if they would have just left that out there and be like, he'll never know, and he's okay with that now. He's accepted, he's moved on. I feel like that would actually tie a bow on that subplot better than doing the Matthew Lillard reveal.
Yeah, maybe. It's just nice having Matthew Lillard
It is.
Having Josh
I do
Hutcherson.
like seeing him. He's cool in things. I'm not mad that he was there.
That's really.
I just think that story beat it could have been better.
Right. That was the number one thing I wanted to see in the movie is Josh Hutcherson. He hasn't done enough in the past few years, and I miss him because he's great. But then I saw the trailer, and the trailer had this cool cinematography, and it looked cool, and that was actually a thing in the movie. Like every time they showed something, it was like beautiful to look at, and they showed like the Freddy Fazbear sign on the outside exterior of the building, but whenever they did, it was always also reflected in some puddle in the concrete. And I'm like, even though they did that like a dozen times in the movie, it always looked good, and I always appreciated watching the movie.
The visuals in the movie looked really good. And I will say too, for the robots, because like that was one thing when we watched Willy's Wonderland, is that the one robot, the chameleon one, had like the color changing skin. That was a great effect. But everything else for all the other robots, you could tell it was someone in a rubber suit. Like it was pretty clear.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I love practical effects. Like I'm not putting that down at all. But I will say in here they use CG for a lot of the robots, and it just.
I don't think they did. No.
You think that was practical?
The whole thing looked practical. It was all Jim Henson puppets with suits.
Really?
I don't think if there was CG, I couldn't tell. Like, I don't know where I don't know where they would have used CG.
If it was practical, then
that looked that was one thing I was gonna say.
It looked really good. Was what I was getting at. Like because Willy's Wonderland, it was practical. I know for a fact those were practical, and it looked okay. But just here, it looked a lot better. They made them look animatronic, but still natural at the same time. Like they moved like a robot would, but it was also believable.
There were moments where you could tell the difference between a puppet and a person in a suit. But it didn't throw me off at all, because I'd rather have practical than
Oh,
CG.
yeah, absolutely. The one time I really noticed was at the end when it was Matthew Lillard in a suit. Like, I knew that one wasn't a robot. Like, that one was clearly a person in a suit. Immediately you could tell. It moved different. It talked, for one. But, like, yeah, that was an outlier. The rest, they looked really good. So, whatever it was, whether it was CG or practical, the effects in here were great. Like, the visuals, I did very much enjoy. I love
like the heaviest effect part. What I could tell was when Freddy kicked Josh Hutcherson, and Josh Hutcherson like lift up in the air and rolled and flipped and then landed again. Like that wire work was like the most obvious use of effects to me.
And how fun would that be? I want to do wire work. Oh my god. I will say I love the setting of this because like in Willy's Wonderland, they didn't play up like the actual Chuck E. Cheese arcade playhouse aspect of it much. Like, you saw the dining area, and then at one point those two went to have sex in, like, the party room. But, like, there was minimal decor. It didn't really look like that's what it was. Whereas in this one, you know, you had the arcade machines. Like, you could see the centipede side art when the girl was hiding. And you saw, like, the claw machine and the cyclone with the ticket counters. And, like, they had the prize counter, the pinball machines. Like, they set the stage more. They filled it out more.
That's so good budget.
Yes, but it showed. Like I know it was just more money to play with, but it did. The location looks really good. Like everything looked more believable. It helped flesh out the world a little more, and it was fun to watch. Like I know part of it's just because I'm a nerd over old arcade stuff, but like I was noticing the individual machines. I'm like, oh, I know what that is. That's really cool to see that. Or like that one is the original side art. I love that. Like it's cool to see the attention to detail. And like when the vandals were coming through and like they smashed the ticket counter, like I was trying to see what the individual prizes in the counter were because it's just, you know, it's that cool stuff you see in the old arcades. And it was nice that they included all the extra stuff in there.
What were those little monster puppet finger things?
Oh yeah, the finger puppet.
You had one on each finger. I always loved those.
So yeah, it was. They did a very good job filling the world out. You know, they had all the posters on the wall and just the welcome sign. Even when they were in the office, they had like all the different office decor and everything. Like it looked more lived in. The world looked more real.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it is just entirely budget. Willy's Wonderland did not have the budget this had, which is crazy because they got Nick Cage.
That's why they didn't.
But yeah,
well, didn't you say Nick Cage did it for free? Like he was just happy to be part of it?
From what I heard, he not only like did it for either free or very low budget, but he actually used some of his money to help produce the film because he just really liked it. So yeah, like that was an indie film that just happened to have a big star in it, whereas this was a Hollywood film adapting a very big popular IP, so they had money to burn. And it does show in some aspects. Like we said, the sets were great, the visuals were great. The acting, I'll say, everyone did a really good job. Like, they were all good in their roles. I did not believe anyone. None of their delivery was corny.
Yeah, even the kid, Annie, whatever, Abby, whatever her name is. Yeah, she was great. Great to watch. And whenever she ran without moving her arms, which always kind of freaked me out a little bit. Like, was that just a weird design choice that
I feel
the
like that's a
director had her
weird
do?
thing kids would do, though, too. Like,
No,
kids are weird.
It is weird. It was like something I noticed and I enjoyed watching for some reason. It was weird.
I will say, like you said, too, like, the pacing in here was really good. Like, at no point was I bored. I wasn't going like, oh, this, there was no part that I thought needed to be cut or trimmed out or anything. Like, it really kept you engaged the whole time.
They could have trimmed it down a little bit. Like, it was, I think it said hour and 46 minutes there.
Maybe.
It could have been a good 10 minutes shorter.
What would you have cut?
Like the very beginning, it took them a little while to get to where I wanted them to go. They had to set up a little bit too many characters. Like the one girl that got eaten
The
babysitter right away. Like, they did all that storyline and just all of a sudden.
They did build her up a lot just to get rid of her. I was surprised there. Like, I thought she was going to be like an ally or maybe help save them from the robots or like was going to protect the kid or whatever. And then nope, just a character they threw in to kill.
The Garrett story, every time they flash back to it, that was a little much because it was always the same thing.
Yeah.
They could have trimmed down a little bit of it, but at the same time, it wasn't boring, but it was teetering on the edge. It could have been.
Yeah, but overall it was, like, again, I don't know how faithful of an adaptation it was to the story in the games. I only played part of the first one, and that didn't seem to have much of a story other than you're in an old haunted Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know why I said it like that. Try not to die. So the story must have come in later games. But it was entertaining enough. I really would have liked to see an R-rated version where they could really double down on some of the spectacle and the kills and just really lean more into the horror aspect of it. Because it is a horror game. Like, these monsters are trying to murder you the whole game. That's the point of at least the first one. So I would have liked to have seen a little less pillow forts and a little more robot murder. So if they had the R rating and could have leaned in more, I think that would have greatly improved the movie. But yeah, otherwise, it was a good film. I enjoyed it. It was fine.
Yeah,
it wasn't the best, but it was fine. It was fine. It was above average.
I'll never watch it again.
Yeah, no, I don't need to see it again, but
I want to see some
actual
Halloween scary. Give me a Mama or Darkness Falls kind of. The children, give me something good
if
for
we
Halloween.
Get another Mama or As Above, So Below, I will be so happy. That's still probably my top 5 favorite horror ever, is As Above, So Below. That was so good. But yeah, I think that's where we're going to leave it tonight, and we'll see you again in another video tomorrow.